On the coast of Syria, in the ruins of a city that died 3,000 years ago, a clay tablet lies where it fell. It has been written, but never sent. The man who wrote it is begging for help, but help arrives too late. The fire that destroys his city will bake his words into stone. 3,000 years from now, we will read them. This is the story of the end of the world. 3,200 years ago, every major civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean collapsed in roughly 50 years. The cities burned. The writing systems vanished. Some places never recovered for 1,000 years. We still don't fully know why, and it looks alarmingly like our own world. The Late Bronze Age was the first globalized world. Not figuratively, literally. From around 1500 BCE, 6 great powers, Egypt, the Hittite Empire, Babylon, Assyria, Mitanni, and Mycenaean Greece, kept formal diplomatic relations. Their kings called each other brother in clay tablet letters. They exchanged gold, ivory, horses, royal brides. Trade ran from Afghanistan to Britain. Tin from the Hindu Kush and tin from Cornwall both ended up in the same bronze swords in Egypt. A pharaoh's dagger needed Cornish tin. That is the level we're talking about. Specialization was extreme. Cyprus had copper. Egypt had grain. Afghanistan had tin and lapis lazuli. Lebanon had cedar timber. The Aegean had olive oil, wine, pottery. No one was self-sufficient. They had built a system with no redundancy, a just-in-time supply chain made of donkey caravans and oared ships. This was the system that died. In 1982, a Turkish sponge diver finds something on the seabed off the southern coast of Anatolia. He describes what he sees as metal biscuits with ears. They are oxhide ingots, 10 tons of copper. The wreck below them is from 1320 BCE, 140 years before everything will end. 22,413 separate dives over 10 years. The cargo reads like an inventory of the Bronze Age world. 354 copper ingots from Cyprus, 1 ton of tin, some of it carried from Central Asia, thousands of kilometers to the east, the rest from the Taurus Mountains of Anatolia. Combined ratio, 10 parts copper to 1 part tin, the exact formula for bronze. Earliest known intact glass ingots: cobalt blue, turquoise, lavender, African ebony logs, elephant tusks, ostrich eggshells. Baltic amber from the actual Baltic Sea, a folding wooden writing tablet, basically a Bronze Age laptop with wax pages, and a single gold scarab inscribed with the name of Nefertiti. 7 cultures' goods on 1 ship. This is what was about to be lost. The Bronze Age world made visible. And under their feet, the ground itself was already deciding the next chapter. Tin is 2 parts per million in the Earth's crust, 2 atoms in every million. It crystallizes only in highly specific granitic intrusions and almost none of them lie anywhere near the great powers of the Bronze Age. The tin that reaches them comes from a handful of distant sources: Cornwall, the Hindu Kush, the Taurus Mountains. There are no good tin deposits in Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Levant, or the Aegean. The civilizations that depended on tin had no domestic tin. Bronze required intercontinental trade by physical, geological necessity. And the climate was already turning. Pollen cores from Cyprus, Syria, the Sea of Galilee, and Lake Van all record the same shift. Between roughly 1200 and 850 BCE, the Eastern Mediterranean enters a centuries-long drought, multi-decadal, crop failures. A speleothem from a cave near Pylos, dated to within 26 years, shows a pulse of dry conditions right before the palace burns. Hittite Queen Puduhepa writes to Pharaoh Ramesses II. Her words are preserved in stone. "I have no grain in my lands." In the years that follow, Egypt ships emergency grain to Hatti, recorded in stone, to keep an ancient great power alive. A superpower on life support, kept breathing by foreign aid. Around this time, the exact year still debated, 4,000 kilometers northwest of the Mediterranean, in Iceland, a mountain begins to wake. Hekla erupts. 7.3 cubic kilometers of tephra blasted into the stratosphere, a column of ash and gas rising 30 kilometers into the sky. The ash drifts east on the jet stream, across the Atlantic, across Europe, into the Mediterranean sky. In Ireland, 3,000 years from now, scientists will cut into bog oak trees, wood preserved for millennia in the peat bogs. Each ring is 1 year of growth. They will find 18 consecutive years of narrow, dark, suppressed rings. 18 winters where the trees barely grew. The volcanic cooling written in wood. In Greenland, scientists will drill cylinders of ancient ice from the glacier. Every layer a year of snowfall, compressed in time. At the depth of these years, they will find a thin, dark band of volcanic ash, frozen between layers of clear ice. Earth's own filing system, kept for 3,000 years. And the Anatolian plate is being squeezed westward between the African, Arabian, and Eurasian plates. The North Anatolian Fault, the most active fault system in the world. The Earth had its own story. The cities were standing on a planet that was already moving. At Pylos, on the western coast of the Peloponnese, the palace administrators write on wet clay tablets. Temporary records meant to be transferred to perishable media and discarded, never intended to survive. In the destruction layer, archaeologists will recover 1,107 of these tablets. One series, the OK tablets, records military formations, watchers guarding the coast, names, locations, numbers. Something is being watched for. The tablets do not say what. In another series, the palace orders bronze statuettes from its own temples to be melted down for weapons. The palace is stripping its gods to arm itself. 300 miles east, in the city of Hattusa, granaries are emptying. The Hittites had ironworking technology. Perhaps the first systematic ironworkers anywhere. Bloomery furnaces by the 14th century BCE. It will not save them. The system held. Trade kept moving. Empires kept their shape. Letters between great kings continued. The grain shipments continued. For one more decade, maybe two, until the collapse is not one event. It is many fires in many cities across about 50 years. Hattusa, capital of one of the great superpowers, is burned and abandoned. The site is so thoroughly forgotten that it will not be rediscovered until 1834. 3,000 years of nobody knowing it had existed. Mycenae, Pylos, Tiryns, Thebes. The palaces of Greece burn. Linear B writing vanishes. Greece enters a 400-year dark age with no writing at all. And in Ugarit, on the coast of what is now Syria, the last king, Hammurapi, sits at his desk. He knows the 7 enemy ships are off the coast. He knows his army is somewhere else, 800 miles away in the land of Hittite. His ships are in the land of Lucca. He dictates a letter to his last scribe. My father, behold, the enemy's ships came here. My cities were burned, and they did evil things in my country. Does my father not know that all my troops and chariots are in the land of Hittite, and all my ships are in the land of Lucca? Thus the country is abandoned to itself. He never sends it. And when Ugarit burns, the fire does what the scribe never meant. It bakes his words into stone. The only reason we can read them now. At Pylos, the palace burns. The clay tablets, wet, unfired, never meant to outlast the season, bake hard. The very catastrophe that destroys Mycenaean civilization is the only reason we can read Mycenaean writing today. We can read Linear B because the world ended. The stones didn't burn, but the cedar beams that held them together, the olive oil that flooded the floors, the grain silos that fed the city, those burned at over 1,000 degrees. And at 1,000 degrees, even stone forgets how to be stone. You have probably heard of the Sea Peoples. The Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses III writes about them on the walls of his mortuary temple at Medinet Habu around 1177 BCE. No land could stand before their arms. From Hatti, Kode, Carchemish, Arzawa, and Alashia, being cut off at one time. Their land was like that which has never come into being. For a long time, the Sea Peoples were the answer, the villains, the mysterious raiders who killed the Bronze Age. But when archaeologists looked carefully at the reliefs, they saw something else. The Sea Peoples were traveling with ox carts full of women and children. That is not a war party. That is a migration. The Sea Peoples were not the cause of the collapse. They were the symptom, the human wave of already collapsing societies looking for somewhere that still worked. When civilization fails, the people don't disappear. They move. The Sea Peoples were the moving. They built a system where a pharaoh's dagger needed Cornish tin, where a Hittite city couldn't feed itself without Egyptian grain, where a Mycenaean palace couldn't make weapons without copper from Cyprus. They didn't think it could break. We built a system where the world's chips come from one island, where critical medicines come from one province, where rare earths come from one country. We don't think it can break either. The Bronze Age didn't die from one wound. It bled out from 100 small ones at the same time. Because it was the kind of body that couldn't survive losing any of them. And in every collapsed city, somebody at the end did what Amurapi did, wrote a letter, asked for help, and waited. Help came. It was just too late. What survives a collapse is not what people thought would survive. The gold scarabs were melted, the bronze swords corroded, the diplomatic letters were lost. But a clay tablet, baked unfinished in a fire that killed its author, that survived. Civilizations leave fingerprints in stone, in ash, in the things their last people couldn't carry. And the earth, the slow, patient earth, keeps writing the next chapter, whether anyone is reading or not.